Information is Fundamental by Alfred Joyce. Video Part 2. 2. Emergence from the fundamental reference point. When trying to understand the fundamental nature of the universe, it's necessary to build our theories from the universe's reference point. So we must keep in mind that even as the universe morphs and emergent characteristics arise, there is still only one universe and it has only one fundamental principle, and thus still only one primordial source fabric/substance, which is information. Once we start referring to information as anything else than simply information, like a photon, a bed, a cat, etc., which our perception and language force us to do, then we are no longer processing the universe from the standpoint of its fundamental level as one primordial fabric/substance, information, but have instead designated emergent reality base levels with assigned entities, photon, bed, cat, etc., with corresponding emergent characteristics, thus establishing non-universally fundamental levels of reality, but subjectively designated emergent reality base levels, where information is processed based on its perceived groupings. Designated emergent reality base levels are established solely according to the human capacity of information processing. Therefore, designated reality base levels are not fundamental nor universal. An example of a designated emergent reality base level is the atomic level, where the base essence is atoms, and reality is processed not as information, but as atoms, which are perceived groupings of information. At this level, the universe is processed in terms of how atoms process information. Another example of a designated emergent reality base level is the quantum level, where the base essence is quantum fields, and reality is processed not as information, but as quantum fields, which are perceived groupings of information. At this level, the universe is processed in terms of how quantum fields process information. Designated emergent reality base levels and their assigned entities are just as real as information, since they are information when perceived at the fundamental level. The designated emergent reality base levels and the fundamental information level exist simultaneously. They are the same substance perceived through different levels of reality. An apple is simultaneously information, quantum fields, and atoms and molecules and cells, etc. So, let's be aware of these designated emergent reality base levels and assigned entities, and the emergent characteristics and creative vocabulary that accompany them, while always keeping in mind that fundamentally speaking, meaning from the reference point of the universe, it's all just information, and information being processed. Therefore, it's important to understand the role vocabulary plays when talking about the universe. We've established that the universe is information and vice versa. There is only one universe, only one information. Our languages assign words to groupings of information as we perceive them. Certain perceived groupings of information were assigned as proton, others as bed, others as cat, as well as any other perceived groupings of information to which a word has been assigned. Earlier, we suggested that information could be compared to the number 0. In this case, since we're discussing groupings of information, let's group them and add them all up. And after doing so, the result we get is 0. So a grouping of information is basically still information, still the universe. Therefore, every perceived grouping of information that has been assigned a word is fundamentally the universe. We perceive the universe and ourselves as various groupings of information based on our designated emergent reality base levels and processing capacity, thus creating differentiation in our vocabulary. But we're fundamentally only describing the universe. Since everything is information, then everything is the universe. Assigned entities, proton, bed, cat, etc., and emergent characteristics are still just information. They aren't made of a new primordial fundamental fabric/substance. If they were, assigned entities would be the fundamental aspect of a whole new universe. But they aren't. They are emergent perceptions made of information which can be traced back to this universe. They are, however, a designated reality base level of emergence/complexity from the human reference point. Like the atomic level has its characteristics where perceived groupings of information behave a certain way, and the molecular level has its characteristics where perceived groupings of information reveal new assigned entities. One might ask, how can a grouping of the same thing, information, produce a new thing, new entities? If we compare the universe to the number 0, doesn't 0 plus 0 plus 0 still equal 0? To answer those questions, let's be clear about what we're talking about. The new entities aren't made of a new thing. They are still made of information. Only they are perceived to be a more complex arrangement of the same old thing. This goes back to the everlasting essence we discussed earlier. And for the sake of humanity, we have assigned new vocabulary to identify specific groupings of information as we perceive them. As for the emergence of new characteristics, it could be understood this way. Equation 1, 0 plus 0 equals 0. Equation 2, 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 0. Equation 3, 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 0. All three equations are adding up the same thing and have the same resulting thing, and they each used the same process. However, there is an intrinsic difference created by the processing action, which can potentially lead to emergent new characteristics. The process of adding two zeros or 25 billion zeros is the same. One happens once, and the other happens almost 25 billion times. However, there is an intrinsic difference to the system, information, undergoing the process. Adding two zeros in your mind doesn't create/require the same mental exertion as adding literally almost 25 billion zeros, even though you're applying the same process to both tasks. And this difference, which is a result of the intrinsic nature of the characteristic aspect of information of something happening, potentially triggers information to morph based on emergent new characteristics. Here's a good time to revisit the definition of information and the coin analogy to fully understand how it's possible for emergent characteristics to manifest, meaning for changes to occur, while information simply remains information. Together, essence and characteristic form information. Since essence and characteristic are inseparable, if one disappeared, so would the other. The smallest possible fundamental thing is information. Essence never changes. It's always the same one fabric/substance. and characteristic is an internal process/action that may change in function over time. Essence could be viewed as side 1, characteristic as side 2, and information as the coin. The two sides together make a coin. No matter how much side 1 remains the same and side 2 changes in design, you will always have two sides, which together still forms a coin. And that is how it's possible for information to remain information despite emergent characteristics. Because as long as there is one aspect essence and one aspect characteristic, it will be considered information. And because essence never changes, information will always be made of the same primordial fabric/substance despite emergent characteristics. Calling it emergent information would be misleading into having us think of it as something different than information. Information is the fundamental level, and because of its everlasting, unchanging fabric/substance essence, we are better served to recognize information as one primordial fabric/substance. As the universe expands and creates more space-time, we don't call the newly created spacetime emergent spacetime. We simply call it spacetime. Or as an organism grows and evolves, we don't call it an emergent organism. It's considered the same organism with new characteristics because we have set the essence-based level at organisms. In the same way, the fundamental essence level is information. So information with new characteristics is still fundamentally information. This remaining the same thing while morphing into something with new characteristics is what the universe is. That is what processing is. That is what information is. That is why everything is the universe, as everything obeys this fundamental principle that is embedded at the core of information, which permeates all. We've been using the number 0 to help convey certain aspects of the universe. Here are some other principles that the number 0 embodies that help illustrate the nature of the universe. 0 is often considered the starting point. It's the demarcation point between the positive numbers and the negative numbers. And if you add all existing numbers together, positive and negative, the total will equal 0. So 0 is the sum of all numbers. Another way to understand this is that 0 encompasses all numbers, infinity. It's the alpha and the omega. Similarly, the universe is the beginning of all things, as well as the sum of all things, manifest and non-manifest, superposition states, quantum fields, virtual particles, dark matter and dark energy, potential. Also, 0 is intrinsically a part of every number. -1 is 0 plus -1. 1 is 0 plus 1. 2 is 0 plus 2, etc. 0 permeates all numbers, as information permeates the universe. Information at its most fundamental level isn't complex. It only features the dual component of a fundamental essence and a fundamental characteristic. On occasions, as information processes information, perceived emergent entities are assigned based on their perceived groupings of information with new sets of characteristics/properties to go along with them. For instance, oxygen, entity, which essence is made of, a perceived grouping of information, behaves in certain ways, its characteristics, as an atom. but pair it with two hydrogen atoms, processing of information, and we perceive an emergent entity, a water molecule, with different characteristics. Again, this newly assigned entity, water molecule, is only information. But this perceived grouping of information is the designated emergent reality base level, molecular level, to which we've assigned the resulting information process as water. And water will exhibit characteristics that neither oxygen nor hydrogen manifested in a perceivable way by us at the atomic level. Hence, the creation of a new designated emergent reality base level, the molecular level. It is conceivable that an entity with a different information processing capability than ours would be capable of perceiving the potential characteristics of water within the individual oxygen and hydrogen atoms. For us, water and its characteristics are perceived at our designated emergent molecular level. For that entity, water and its characteristics would be perceived at our designated atomic level. And needless to say, they would perceive the universe differently than we do, but they would process the same information. Information processing creates our perception of information groupings when possible according to its characteristics, and thus new designated emergent reality base levels are established based on their emergent characteristics. Here are some examples. A quantum field is a designated emergent reality base level at which assigned entities, particles, emerge. And as particles process information and their perceived groupings of information morph, one of this level's emergent characteristics is the formation of assigned entities, atoms. At the designated emergent atomic level, atoms emerge. And as atoms process information and their perceived groupings of information morph, one of this level's emergent characteristics is the formation of assigned entities, molecules. At the designated emergent molecular level, molecules emerge. And as molecules process information and their perceived groupings of information morph, one of this level's emergent characteristics is the formation of assigned entities, cells. At the designated emergent cellular level, cells emerge. And as cells process information and their perceived groupings of information morph, one of this level's emergent characteristics is the formation of assigned entities, life forms. With these few examples, we can see how information and information processing permeates all levels of reality, and how information is never lost. Instead, it is preserved at each level, simply perceived differently.